Before version 42 launched, Epic tweeted out asking for ideas for new cards with the new card system. I wanted something that played with an enemy's maximum health. Well, they came up with Amplification Engineer with fair amount of stats, but a ridiculous passive. What does the math say about this card? Morigesh Action is a game and screen recorder that offers the lowest megabytes per frame, the lowest computer resource usage, and the highest FPS recording. Check the link in the video description to learn more. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Paragon Guide. I am Sylphin, and today we're looking at Amplification Engineer. What's a TLDR? 10 Intellect, 2 Agility, Chaos card with a fair amount of stats but a ridiculous passive that deals percentage-based damage of the enemy's health when you use an ability. Basically, it's a lot of damage when you take a look at the math, and essentially, it does a lot of damage. It best synergizes with heroes that can use abilities frequently, like Shinbi or Crunch. Amplification Engineer pays off, kind of hard to say, around the 400 health of your enemy target, so the enemy heroes don't need to have much health. Against a squishy low health target, Amplification Engineer is still a better card than most when looking at influence per ability, assuming again that you have a hero that synergizes well with Amplification Engineer. Against a tanky and or healthy targets, Amplification Engineer, it's insane. It's insane value. There's really no better word for it. With such high health and the prevalence of tanky heroes, Amplification Engineer can provide a counter in today's meta. If using Shinbi, Crunch, even the Fae, Countess, or Morigesh, she does have a few abilities that she can use quite frequently, their high frequency of ability usage synergizes very, very well with Amplification Engineer. That said, Amplification Engineer is a very high damage card that is a terrifying option if you want to chunk high health duo or even trio tank / brawler compositions. That was the TLDR. Stick around for more in-depth look at the card. Just know it does a lot of damage. So guys, if you haven't heard of Amplification Engineer, it's a 10 Intellect, 2 Agility, overall 12 point cost Chaos card that used to be 13. They reduced its cost and increased its effect. It's insane. 20 power, 180 mana is pretty darn good. It provides a good amount of stats, not as much as other cards, but the passive more than makes up for it. It's called Unstable Spells. When casting an ability, not passives or toggles, however, nearby enemy units within 1300 units range, that is ranged basic attack range, take 12% of their current health as ability damage. So keep that in mind. If you are a long range caster and you're using abilities, you're not going to be affecting your targets at maximum range. So if you're a shorter range caster, something like Morigesh, who has to go a little bit closer, then she will actually pretty much always be dealing damage with Amplification Engineer on her target. Even her mark, she has to get closer to 1300 unit range. So just know that long range heroes, you're not going to really be affecting too many people with Amplification Engineer. A simple look at current enemy health versus ability damage. It's really simple. Just health, what is 12% of that, and there you go. Remember, ability armor is a thing, and we do take that into account later on, but just to kind of give you an idea, it's pretty darn good. Even carries have around 1700 health at hero level 20, and that's a lot of damage. When you think of the total amount of damage that your abilities deal, an extra 192, 240 health, well, no, 192, that's a lot of damage. Yes, there is ability armor, but that's a lot. And even if it's more than that, if you're talking about super tanky Sevarog, for example, look at how much damage potential there is on brawlers and especially tanks. It's pretty nuts. So when we go down here and look at some scenarios, you know, the whole picture starts to reveal itself. So here we're looking at Crunch, level 15 with 20 power. 20 power with Amplification Engineer or without Amplification Engineer with another card that has 20 power on it, trying to balance things out. We have the abilities that Crunch in this first scenario uses with Amplification Engineer, without Amplification Engineer. What is the delta between with Amplification Engineer and without it? And then what's the enemy health? Because Amplification Engineer is based off of the current health, we have to take that into account and just kind of, you know, minus the damage that we deal from their health. So the basic attack with Crunch, you know, the perfect engagement. You start with the basic and then animation cancel all your way to basically you always use your uppercut. Let's just face it. You can start to see it's insane. Look at this first ability. Look at your first left Crunch. This is after armor. This is after the effects of armor. 457 damage. Wow. Basically double that of without Amplification Engineer with a 20 power card in its place. Insane. Basic attacks here end up being the same because 20 power, 20 power. The next ability, 382 versus 207, just a little bit less because we've chunked this person down, almost 600 damage so far. And then it starts, obviously that difference gets less and less because the enemy health gets lower, meaning Amplification Engineer gets lower. But as you can see, by the end, by the time that you kill this person, you have dealt 678 more damage after armor with Amplification Engineer on. 52 damage per ability. When we want to take a look at per ability, meaning that if you were to equip power to make it the same effect as having Amplification Engineer, you would need 64 power for your basics, 25 for your left, 28 for your right, 22 for your empowered right Crunch. So you would need an additional 52 power. You need a card that gives you 52 power instead of Amplification Engineer in this scenario. Obviously, such a card does not exist, which is why Amplification Engineer is so good. Now the next scenario is even more insane because we have Shinbi, level 15 with 20 power, attacking an enemy with 3,000 health, and they're kind of a bruiser. They have a damage card. I added some basic and ability armor, but not as much as like a true full-on tank. Line tempo, when you're walking up to them, look at this, 430 damage after armor versus normally just 153. Insane. Then you have some basic attacks. Use your circle rhythm, which only procs it on its first use. It's on the activation, not on the actual application of ability damage. So then the next circles, they do their normal damage, but the first one does extra. You do your circle, you're kind of right in there, use a line tempo on them. That one chunks them too. You do your rushing beat. Again, only on the first one does it proc, the second one does not proc it. Line tempo again for some good chunk damage as well. And as you can see, by the time you use your all kill, it's 1,351 damage with an 8 wolf all kill versus 884, meaning you deal 1,402 extra damage by the time you kill this person. Yes, it's overkill, but it just goes to show Amplification Engineer was like made. It was made for Crunch and Shinbi. It's just insane. 127 extra damage per ability, and that is one circle rhythm because it doesn't proc on the rest of the damage. That is one rushing beat. It doesn't proc on the second use of rushing beat. 127 power. You would need a card that gives you 127 power to equal what Amplification Engineer did in this scenario. It's just insane. It's absolutely insane. Yes, all kill. It has good scaling, so you don't need much power to equal its damage. But for rushing beat, line tempo, and your basic, of course, you need a lot of power. So it's with Shinbi in this scenario, it's insane. And I want to show you that even on a squishy target, it's still good. Before we get to that, we need to go up against a super tanky Sevarog. So Crunch, level 15 with 20 power versus a super tanky Sevarog. So this is 3 tank cards on a 4,000 health Sevarog. Let's see what this does. So basics, yeah, they don't do much, 52 damage. But look at this left crunch. Even after all of the armor, 479 damage versus only 187. Yeah, it doesn't do much. Basics, again, doesn't do much. But this right crunch still does an insane amount of damage. The empowered right crunch to stun him does an insane amount of damage. Your left crunch still does an insane amount of damage. Your right crunch, and then so basically you go through two empowered kind of cycles on crunch, and you can see, look at how much damage we've done. We've went from 4,000 health on the Sevarog to 1,632. Insane. 93 damage per ability used over this rotation on this super tanky Sevarog, meaning we need a ton of power to equate the equivalent impact of Amplification Engineer, and you can't get that. You simply can't get this much power or the equivalent of that much power on any other card. Amplification Engineer on a super tanky Sevarog is crazy, even on a super squishy carry like this example is. It's worth it. Check this out. A basic, again, doesn't deal that much because carries, they still end up getting a ton of basic armor through all of the agility, which is questionable. And you have the left crunch here. Look at this, 389 damage as you open up on this carry. Your right crunch, it does get reduced quite a bit because, I mean, they don't have much health, so you know, you're chunking them pretty well. Even your third ability here still has a pretty big delta between the two. And then your second cycle of empowered abilities, well, here the guy's dead, so you don't have to even bother with that. As you can see, right before they die, there's barely any difference. So it's crazy. And even in this scenario, take a look. It's still worth a lot. Amplification Engineer is 36 extra damage per ability used, which is, with power on crunch, it's not that bad. So take a look. This is on top of the 20 power that Amplification Engineer gives you already. So we're talking 37, 39, 35 power, and then obviously 66 or 56 power. So Amplification, even on a squishy target over a whole rotation of attacking this hero, it's still tremendous value. It is still tremendous value. And I mean, assuming if you can actually do it and you just don't instantaneously die, it's phenomenal. So with all this raving, what are those statements and conclusions we can make about Amplification Engineer? Obviously, it synergizes with heroes that can best use abilities frequently. Shinbi uses abilities all the time. Crunch uses abilities all the time. Faye kind of does. She has a good burst, but then her Harvest Nettles is an ability she can use every 3 seconds. That's every 3 seconds, chunking 12% of nearby heroes. Yeah, I mean, it's the Fae. Maybe don't want to be so close, and the fact that Harvest Nettle is super long range doesn't necessarily synergize, but if you want to kind of get in there close, you kind of use Amplification Engineer. You have a really good front line. It is a good option. Morigesh, even especially because she is relatively closer range, she can use this as well. She has her own burst, I suppose. She just has long cooldown abilities. It can work. Amplification Engineer pays off around the 400 health on your target, depending on how frequently your hero uses abilities. If you use abilities very infrequently, maybe like a Countess perhaps, or even a Wraith. I mean, he can use his snipe every 6 seconds, but his other abilities, can't really use that. I mean, he does have a burst if he converts all his kit on a target using an Amplification Engineer to its max. It's hard to say when it pays off. The point is that if you, again, are on a squishy target and you use a whole rotation on a hero that synergizes well, it still pays off. So it's kind of hard where to say it pays off. Even if your target has 400 health, it's still a lot of damage per ability. And getting the power equivalent, yes, you can at that low health, but it still does. So it is good. Against a squishy low health target, Amplification Engineer is still a better card than most when looking at influence per ability, which is just what we said. Against tanky and or healthy targets, obviously Amplification Engineer provides insane value. With such high health and the prevalence of tanky heroes, Amplification Engineer could provide a counter to today's meta. Tankiness versus tankiness kind of isn't necessarily working anymore. Yes, it can, but I think people are trying to discover these other abilities that use or other cards that do a fantastic job. And with a proper team composition, with proper strategy, with a good front line that can really disrupt the enemy team to allow your damage dealers to actually apply that damage instead of just getting obliterated, I think we're rediscovering proper team compositions, proper team roles and builds, so that damage heroes can exist once again. If using Shinbi, Crunch, Faye, Countess, or even Morigesh, their high frequency of ability usage synergizes with Amplification Engineer. Countess, Amplification Engineer, Reactor Beast, maybe even Shadow Dancer, so that she can just Shadow Dancer right into there, absolutely destroy one hero, use Amplification Engineer to apply all that extra damage to all the heroes around her, and then she can use Reactor Beast to then kill that person and get all of her abilities back. Like, that potential is insane. Absolutely insane. And even Morigesh could actually use that as well. She has really long cooldowns. So I mean, if you can, with Morigesh, with Reactor Beast, Amplification Engineer, maybe Nameless Curse, or even Shadow Dancer, I mean, the potential is there. It's insane. So Amplification Engineer is a very high damage card that is a terrifying option if one wants to chunk high health, duo, even trio tank brawler comps. Especially when there's two fighters. There's a fighter in the solo lane in the jungle, and they have a melee, and then you have a melee support like Steel or Richter, and then you have these three heavy-duty frontline heroes that just want to stay alive, so they build a lot of sustain. Amplification is just going to run to town, and with the fact that we've proven that it kind of is really valuable even on low health targets, it's just an amazing card. So guys, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Amplification Engineer. Are you going to use it? Who do you want to use it on? Yeah, Crunch. He's I mean, he's a big guy in the front line, so building tanky with him. I do have a build coming out for him, a deck that tries to curve into Amplification Engineer that still gives him tank, but the other heroes, they can obviously get away with it. How are you going to use it? It's monstrous. Let me know. Amazon is the tried and true way of shopping for anything you need or want at the lowest prices. Support the channel at no cost to you by doing your Amazon shopping through the link in the video description. Please like this video if you like it, dislike it, share it with the community, of course. Guys, subscribe if you guys like this content, especially if you found it useful. Subscribe so I can do it for you in the future. See the video description for links to my website, merchandise store, Amazon affiliate link, as well as all of my social media here. Huge shout out to my Patreon supporters and Twitch subscribers and YouTube sponsors. All of you guys are amazing in helping me make these videos possible. Till next time, like always, stay optimistic and positive.